I try not to look back. I mean, I really don't look back much at all. It's like I try to just focus on the future and what we're doing now, and then just write stuff that I think sounds cool and works. I don't care what you believe, as long as you don't push it on me, you know what I mean? It's like, being an atheist is just like, I don't walk up to people and be like, oh, you're going to church? Why are you going to church? There is no God. Blah, blah, blah. I don't get in there. I don't try and present that to them. You believe what you want. But when religion is used as a tool for extremism or to twist people into thinking certain things, and I don't know, it's obviously used to do a lot of bad as probably as much as good, so that's the stuff we look at. We look at the abuse within things that have happened in the church, which have happened, and we're just kind of reflecting that, whether it's stuff we've seen in the news or whatever. I mean, it's not like we're talking about stuff that doesn't exist, like it didn't happen.
The first thing I've got to ask you, and it's been a study of mine and a fascination of mine, particularly for the last 3-4 years of the podcast, because as I get on in years, and I start realizing my age, I also look at a lot of the bands that I've listened to for many years, and it feels to me like there is a very, very select small group of bands that came with me from the 90s who are still making music that is exceptional today, and can hang with their first work, their early work, or their seminal work. I would make the argument that Immolation out of those bands is probably the cream of the crop. I actually said the other day that, thinking about it critically, I cannot recall a bad Immolation song. I can't think of a single song across any of your albums that I've listened to and I've gone, boy, that's a fucking miss. So my question to you, and I know there was a long preamble.
I can give you a list, but that's
okay. How do you do it? How have you guys managed to put out or to write a record like Descent so far into your career? Because it is an extraordinary album.
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm just glad you like it as a fan, I guess. So that you said you've been into us for a while. That means a lot, so it's just, I think it just comes from enjoying the music, enjoying what we do, and being passionate about it. I mean, in writing new music, it's just like any other record we've ever done. You sit down and you're trying to come up with stuff that you think works and sounds interesting or cool, and that's really all it is. It's not like we go and say, okay, this record's going to be like this. We're going to try this. We're going to try doing that. It's whatever comes up, it's like more of a natural thing. And, yeah, I mean, this one, I think I started writing stuff in 24 for this, but I didn't start putting songs together until like March 25. And that's when the first song, which is the first song on the record, came about. And then from that point on, it was just working on music, up until October 1st when we went to the studio, But again, it's a crazy process, and it's nothing that can be explained other than we just enjoy what we do. We've been doing it long enough where I think we know what works and doesn't work a lot better than we used to, in the sense of like, we don't need to do this that many times, or this is great, you only need to do this once in the song. I mean, whatever the feeling goes with, what, this works, let's go straight, and that's it. And so that's about it, but it does get harder because you have more songs, you have like 100 something songs now, and you're trying to create new songs. But I try not to look back. I mean, I really don't look back much at all. It's like I try to just focus on the future and what we're doing now, and then just write stuff that I think sounds cool and works, and what we like. And we're like, wow, this sounds really cool. Like I'll still call, get in touch with Ross if I come up with a cool part of it. Check this out. I'll email it to him, whatever. If there's something that's really like, wow, this is going to be cool, or whatever. But I mean, so there's still that excitement in it. You know what I mean? It's what we do. We're lifers now. So, we just keep doing it, and we're passionate about it. And it's always cool to see where we can take the music next. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, to come up, I'm very happy with this record, both musically and the production and everything just came out so great, and it's surprising to us too, because after to have a 12th record this far into a career and just be this excited about it and proud of it, is awesome for us as well.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how much of your writing style or your approach to writing music has changed or has evolved, like since the dawn of Possession days? Because I mean, it would be unbelievable to me to think that you do that, that you're going through the same cycle, the same process, nearly 40 years in.
It's almost the same. I mean, obviously, when the very first beginning, things were a little different. Obviously, we didn't have to be able to record on our computers and stuff like that, or have computers at that time. A lot has changed technology-wise, and how we operate, because back then we were younger, we're hanging out together, we're around each other a little bit more, I guess you'd say. But in the end, I mean, it's basically writing stuff and presenting it and working it out together. It's just that now we're able to do it on our own because, ever since 2010, we had the computer. I was late to the game, I'm sure, so I was able to do everything on the computer. Which to me was amazing, to be like, wow, multiple tracks. I could write drums for parts. I could put different guitar parts, overlay parts, and be so creative and work on like intros and different, instrumental stuff. So to me, it was like a whole new world opened up, and so that was the big change. It made it a lot easier on because Steve was with us back in the day when, he was with us at the time when we didn't have anything other than a cassette recorder, and I'd play stuff for him, or I'd sit there in front of him in the rehearsal room and move my arms around trying to explain what kind of beat I'm looking for. I'm thinking about something like this. Now I could send it to him, and he gets a full idea of my ideas and kind of what the feeling should be or what we're trying to go for, and then he could work with that. Because I could send him now, just guitar parts with a click, and then he does his thing. So it's just a cooler way of working, but overall it's been the same, where it's like I just sit down, I write stuff, and I put stuff together, and when I feel it's where it needs to be, I present it to everybody. And sometimes we make adjustments, sometimes we don't. More so nowadays, it's like I put it together and it's like, all right, there's song one, and that's it, and we just go with it, So, but the input is always there. I mean, there's always like, if there's something that's a fail, obviously we address it, and so yeah, and everybody does their own thing in a sense. Like Steve works on his drums, like Alex's contribution with some of his riffs that he sends to me, as well as like the solo stuff. Like our solo styles are very similar because we come from the same school, I think, you know what I mean, and we have a similar way of writing, and it's definitely a similar solo style. So I think it blends together very well. And then obviously with the lyrics, Ross and I work on that, and his vocal delivery has gotten better over the years, I think, his enunciation and all that. So it's all the elements together. So it's like I do a big majority of it from the beginning, but then once we start putting stuff together, it reflects everybody, But that's the way it's been, up until this point for years.
I would imagine as kind of the chief songwriter for the band, that's also quite an empowering thing to have, is knowing you have those tools at your disposal to be able to execute your vision perfectly. Because like you say, Ross as a vocalist has improved. He's a phenomenal bassist. You've got Steve, who's an absolute savage drummer. And then you've got Alex, who can kind of keep up with you from a guitar perspective. It must feel empowering to know, if I think it, I can do it based on what I've got available to me.
Yeah, I mean, we never, technical wise, I think we were trying to pull off crazy shit, back then, like from the second album on. Once I got a drum machine, I had the Roland MK2, whatever, drum machine. Even back then, it wasn't quite as sophisticated as what we can do now with the computers, but just how I can like create a drum part, and then, Craig would be like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, I'm telling you, it could be done, and then, we go over and over and over. So, I mean, it's like, every tool helps, but it's, having an idea and then working on it together and making sure it works, but yeah, I mean, nowadays, I never worry about that aspect at all. It's just like I just write the stuff, and then like Steve will make stuff more crazy than anything I could come up with. He'll throw stuff in there and be like, wow, what the hell's he doing? And then I'll listen to it a few times and I'll be like, God damn, that's fucking cool, and so he's got a way of creating stuff that just like goes to the next tier, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, it is a good thing. I mean, everyone is 100% and puts in the time and wants to create something cool. So we all put our time in separately, and when we get together, we do our thing. Like with the record, for instance, the songs are all written. The first time we play them live, like this last time, I don't even know if we rehearsed. We might have rehearsed once or twice. I don't even remember. I think we rehearsed a couple of times, but Steve went into the studio and he recorded the drums in Ohio. A day later, we'd get like 3 tracks from that, and then we recorded them to them here in Rochester. And so we weren't even together this time. in that sense. And most of the time, we're not really, going through the songs heavily together until they're all done. You know what I mean? And we got to go play them live. So and that takes a lot for everyone to do their own thing and be on the same page, but put in the work and put in the time to make sure they're ready for either a tour or the record or whatever. So yeah, it is cool. It's empowering for all of us because we all can rely on each other. You know what I mean? So that's really what it comes down to.
Which I would assume is an asset on stage as well, because I've seen you guys live a couple of times.
Absolutely.
You're again, as the years have gone on, I would make the argument that you're an even tighter band live now than you were 20 years ago.
Not even a question. If I see something from even a couple of years ago or 10 years ago, I'm just like, I don't want to see it. It's like, because I always feel like we're at our best now. Like we just did this Mayhem Marduk tour, and it was like, yeah, okay, we hadn't practiced together until we hit the stage, so we were a little shaky the first show or two, in the sense of like, just working out the kinks. But man, once we got rolling, that's it, and you're doing those songs every night. It just feels like a machine, and it's awesome because you can rely on everybody on stage. There's not going to be any derailments or anything. It's just, everyone just full steam ahead, and that's good. It's a confident feeling for all of us. We know we're going to hit that stage and just go. Like the last show of that tour, a funny story, it was like we were in Gothenburg, Sweden, and our vehicle got stuck like an hour and a half outside of town. So the Marduk crew, as well as the Mayhem crew, the Mayhem tour manager, all these people got together, made phone calls, whatever. We ended up getting a friend's van from the Mayhem people, hooked up the trailer, drove us an hour and a half into town. We got there 20 minutes after we were supposed to be on stage. The whole crew got us out of that van, fully stood up with all our equipment on stage within 18 minutes. And we had just done a ride from Finland, a 16-hour ferry ride, a 5-hour van ride, then another hour and a half van ride, got out of the van, and then, we didn't even, sound check. We didn't tune up. We hit the stage and just played, right as soon as we got there. And it was one of the best shows, you know what I mean? So you have that confidence in the people once you hit the stage. And luckily we had an amazing team of people, on the tour that were super helpful in getting us up there. So that was just a great experience of everybody working together, you know what I mean? And confidence in not only our band, but the whole tour package, in helping us out and their, all their teams. So yeah,
how much
together, it works out good.
How much sleep are you getting on a trip like that? Because you're talking about like probably total travel time. If I was following you correctly, it's over or at least very close to 24 hours.
Yeah, well, the ferry ride, they did have like a cabin so you can sleep, because the one that we took was like 16 hours, So there are shorter, depends on how far you drive before you hit the ferry, So we took the one where you drive less, I guess, and you're on the ferry for a longer period of time. But yeah, there's cabins, so you do have time to sleep on a ferry ride that long. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I tell you, sometimes I get more sleep than I do at home, but then other nights I get no sleep. It just depends, It's just every night's different, and I'm sure anybody on tour will tell you that, Because like, sometimes you have the luxury, as a band member, it's like, some of the crew guys, yeah, they got to be up at 10 in the morning no matter what, etc. But we get to sleep in a little bit, but sometimes I'll go to sleep early and get up late, and I'll be in that bunk for like 12 hours, which is like I never do at home, But then sometimes I can't get to sleep, and you get no sleep. So it varies, but you try not to let the traveling, impede that too much. But it does on occasion. It's just the name of the game.
I was going to say, you're still to this day a pretty hard touring band. You're 55 now, if I'm not mistaken.
I am.
Have you seen all the jokes online about how you somehow have drunk from the fountain of youth? You never get old.
Yeah, well, that's my back and knees,
I was going to say, like, how do you cope with like a long stretch of dates? Because like this Godless 4 tour you guys are about to go on, that's a demanding schedule. And then I saw you felt that you're not busy enough, so you booked a whole bunch of dates in and around that as well.
Well, the bottom line is when you're out on a tour, you need to. That tour starts on the West Coast, so whenever there's a band starting on the West Coast, for that's obviously the headliner needs to start there, so that's where they're starting. So for us, we're on the East Coast, so to get out to the West Coast, that's a lot of traveling. Like we've done that before, where we've driven straight out. Ross and I on the last tour we did with Cattle Decapitation, Ross and I alone drove the van and trailer all the way out to the West Coast in like 2 days, and then started the tour and flew everybody else in. But we have, we're sharing a bus now with Rotting Christ and everything. So when you have a vehicle and you have all the stuff going on, to get out there, you want to kind of make your way out there and get a couple of shows, not only, warm-up shows that are nice, but, when there's dead days, you want income on those days too. So it's like it's a cross between the two. So you want to work our way out to the West Coast and then work our way back. So we did add dates going and coming, and we have a few in between too, because there's a couple of days that I guess Behemoth, they have the right to take off or whatever that they needed, and but we wanted to fill them in because we're out there, so we like to fill in a couple where we can. So where we could, we have like one date I think that's got like us, Deicide, Rotting Christ, Cattle the Cap, and a few other bands, like 2 tours almost coming into one, which is really cool. We have multiple dates with Deicide on their own, and we have some dates with Rotting Christ on our own, and some with the 3 of us. So it's like it's a mixed match kind of thing of different shows. But obviously, all around the Godless 4 tour, that's the main tour. But we like to do stuff in between because it just having days off to us, we have plenty of drive days, so we might as well make use of the days that we don't need to drive. So.
Yeah, you've seen all the sites. You don't need to do any of the touristy stuff.
Yeah.
You've
seen, I still love
seen and done what you need to.
Sure, and I love that. And unfortunately, like this last tour in Europe, the tour was phenomenal. I mean, any one of the bands will tell you, like, wow, this was a spectacular tour because the package was fucking great. Us, Marduk, Mayhem, it was just such a cool package, And the crowds were great. The shows were amazing. But, like personally, we didn't really get out too much. Like, I think I saw only the clubs almost. As the first tour was like almost every day is just a club because, the weather wasn't the best and we had a lot going on. There was a lot to deal with. And, if you have like, 2 hours to maybe go out in the city and it's like kind of half raining and cold out, it's like, at 55, it's like, yeah, you know what? I don't need to, I have been to Prague before. It's like, I don't need to go out there in the shitty weather and then get sick now for the next 3 days. You know what I'm saying? So we take that into account too, but it just wasn't a lot of time. So, and that being said, we still had a great time, but we do love I love seeing different places and I love getting out there. This particular tour just didn't work out, unfortunately, but like with the US, yeah, I mean, again, if there's time, we love to go out and check stuff out. Whenever there's time, we're still there. I'll go to the Eiffel Tower 10 times in a row. I've been there before. I'll do it again. If we're close enough and there's time, it's cool for me. I enjoy seeing different things and getting out into the cities for sure. But it's just a time factor sometimes. And in the US, yeah, at this point, it's like, we're just there. We're working, we want to get out. The show's the main thing. And if, we can get out and do something, fine. But our main concern is to, get out there and play the show and do as many shows as we can. Because I know there are areas that, maybe people aren't going to be able to come out to the Godless 4. But if we're able to do three of the bands or a couple of the bands in their area, then that's cool, so why not?
When you're out on a tour like that and you've got big names, established names with you, is there an element of them making you raise your game? Do you kind of feel like you have to rise to the occasion when you play with those bands?
I think on a tour like this, we've all been in it a long time. We all know what we're doing, and we do it as best we're going to all do it. You know what I mean? I don't think there's any like, all right, we really got to get them this time. It's just we're going out with like bands that we've known for years. There's only Behemoth's the only band that we haven't toured with on that bill. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's cool because we've always wanted to tour with those guys, and we know most of their crew and everything as well for years. So because we have a connection from we were with a touring agency over there for many years, a Polish agency, Massive Music. Great people with that thing, and we've known all those guys through there as well as the Vader team, Behemoth guy, like everybody. It's like a big the Polish community over there, and they're all in, we've known them for a long time. So for us to tour with them now is going to be awesome, because we know those guys. So again, it's just all bands we've toured with before or have known for years. So I think it's just, we're just all happy. And I'm sure I speak for all the bands to be able to have such a cool package and present that to the fans, seeing 4 bands that have been around all these years, doing it all these years and doing it well all these years and always giving it, they're all for so many years. And it's just cool. It's a cool thing. It's a great package. And I love the idea of it. You know what I mean? So yeah, we're psyched, and it's just going to be just a fun time.
Well, Sakis was telling me when he was on the podcast that the friendship with Immolation goes back all the way to like the demo tape. He was talking to me about, I think it was the first or the second demo. In fact, I think he mentioned the rehearsal demo, being the one that he exchanged with you guys, and you've sort of been in touch with Rotting Christ ever since then, which was 1989.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, we have a rapport with all these guys for years and years, and whether they come, we see them when they come out to a show, or if they're playing in town, we try and see them, and vice versa. And and then back in the day where it was all through mail and trading tapes and all that stuff. I mean, so many different bands we have that relationship with, and it's cool. It's cool to see how the scene has developed in so many years. You know what I mean? Like how far it's gotten, because I don't think any of us, tape trading in the mail back in the late 80s, early 90s, whatever, have thought, that we're playing all these big places and, with any of these bands, like, we played like the London Roundhouse with Cannibal Corpse on their tour, and it's like, I know Behemoth's playing a lot of big, huge places, both over there and here, and they've been doing phenomenal. And it's cool to see, it's just, I guess we always hope that we get to that point, but, this music came from the extreme underground where you would never, where I'm sure for years and years, a lot of the mainstream just kind of like this, it's like, yeah, whatever. And now it's like become like a thing, you know what I mean? It's finally, it took 40 years, but it reached like a point where it's acknowledged a lot more than it was in the past, especially in the, and it's just a good thing to see the longevity of it and how far it's gotten, as a musical genre.
You guys have taken a particularly interesting journey through that evolution, though, because I think, when Dawn of Possession, year and after Failures for Gods, when those records were coming out, I'd love to get your perspective on that. But as much as they were, very well received, I kind of always felt like Immolation were like a fine wine. It wasn't for everybody. Not everyone was going to appreciate it.
Was not. No, it was not at all.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's, hey, it is what it is. Like in writing, we just do what we feel works for us, and we hope that people dig it. And I think, I mean, I think, sure, back for a while, it would be like either you're an Immolation fan or you're not. You know what I mean? Like either you get it, you don't, whatever. But we never looked at it in any other way than like, we took a lot of influences from back in the day and bands that we loved and were excited about, and we love this genre, and we just wanted to try and create stuff with it, and we took our path, and that was it, And I think over the years, maybe it's I think that's gotten better. I think because I think we have a lot of support, and we see it at the shows, we see it at the festivals. Like more and more, we see the feedback is a lot better over the years now than it's been in the early days. It's definitely gotten much better, and it's cool to see. And I think, to be honest, I think we've gotten better at what we do. So I see that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like everything's a learning process up to this point. We're always learning with every record, with every show, and I feel like we've always gotten better and better. Everyone's going to argue what album they like best, whether it's the first one or the last one or whatever. But I think they're all great stuff. They're all good stuff, and I think in order, almost 40 years later, continuing to do it at that level, I don't think we've gone downhill personally. So, you hope that people like it, and I think we get better at what we do, and I think that shows, and I think people accept it more. I don't know, but it's only gotten better for us. I can tell you that from our perspective. So,
what do you think was the catalyst for that change? Because for me, as somebody who was into you guys from Dawn of Possession, where it felt to me like there was a shift and more people started getting what you guys were about, was when Close to a World Below came out. That to me was the album that kind of, I think Failures for Gods laid the groundwork, but when Close to a World Below came out, I think a lot of people that had slept on you guys kind of finally sat up, took notice, and went like, all right, there's something different and very special about these guys.
I guess I don't know, because I've been here since the beginning, so I don't know what people are thinking. It's like we just keep doing what we're doing. I mean, every album brings something new to the table, and then maybe sparks something else. Of Failures was, I mean, production-wise, I think it definitely was a step up production-wise, so that's probably part of it. I think, I mean, both album covers were phenomenal, but that is definitely an eye-catching album cover for one, on Close or Below, and I think, the songs were definitely, I don't know, they were maybe a little bit more fine-tuned or something, but it's hard for me to say. It's like, we just put the stuff out there, so I can't say what it is that people like or dislike about it, because we're presenting it. So, but I know it did very well. And then I think Majesty and Decay was another, big turning point, because we first record on Nuclear Blast. I think a lot of the production stuff, definitely got help because Zach Oren, that was the first record he worked with us on, so it had more of a modern production, and I think the sound was much better. And from that point on, the productions have been better and more modernized. Where Paul Orfino, who we've worked with for years, did phenomenal work on the past stuff, but he's coming at it from a different angle. So once we went to someone that did more, a modern take on it, I think that helped us in a lot of ways too. And I think from that point on, it's gotten better. And with every record, like Atonement, that was another level. I think like Atonement came out, and we saw a big, it seemed like there was a lot more excitement with that one. And then at the tail end of Atonement, we just decided, you know what, we didn't tour enough for this record. So 2019, we just said, look, let's just tour, So we got in touch with all our agencies and said, we want to get on the road. And we hit about every continent in 2019. And I think that helped. And we did a lot of tours with a lot of good bands. And then the pandemic hit. So we got very lucky, because we just did tons and tons of touring that whole year, everywhere from Japan to Australia to the United States to Canada to South America, I believe. And then everything shut down. So it was like, so we kind of like got on that tail end of that record, and I think that helped that record a lot and helped it get out there a lot. And then, from that point on, I think it's still escalated, even with the last record. So, and I think, changes we've made, we've been getting on some much cooler, bigger tours now. We've been able to, get on some cooler tours, cooler packages, and that does a lot too, because you're getting out in front of the people. I think a lot of the thing is getting out there too, like getting out in front of certain crowds that you might not get out in front of, because you could tour, for 10 years. And if you're touring in front of the same people, you're not going to gain, you're not going to make any gains as far as like, people knowing who you are. So we've been lucky enough to get on some really cool tours and packages over these past few years. And it's done a lot of good as well. So, we're getting out to bigger crowds, and a lot of people, I mean, we're going to tour, every tour we do with Cannibal Corpse, or even like a tour we're going to do with Behemoth, over half that crowd probably don't know who we are yet. You know what I'm saying? I guaranteed, so, because, not everybody's into every band, and they might be only into the bands that they've heard of or whatever. So you're always going to find new people every show you do, especially when you're touring with bands you haven't toured with before, or bands that are bigger than you. There's always going to be people there that haven't, seen you, whether it's a death metal tour or black metal, whatever. Because people tell me like, oh, what? There's people at a Cannibal show that haven't heard of you guys? I'm like, believe me, it's like half that crowd just like, oh, I never heard of you guys. How long you been around? So, and that's the way it is, because they have a broader audience, So it always helps us, no matter what kind of tour we're on, So I guess all that combined, I guess, has been helping, and just the fact that we keep going, by default, we're still here. So we just keep trying to go and keep going forward,
Well, you're going, but I think very importantly, and it comes back to the point that I made at the beginning of the conversation, you're still making music that sits comfortably with the best stuff that you've ever done. It doesn't feel like you're playing to a brand. Like if I listened to the new record, and it was the same feeling that I got on Acts of God, and frankly on everything else that you guys have done, but it genuinely feels like a band who wants to do what they're doing.
Yeah,
there's a lot of bands, without naming names, that, and apologies for the interruption, but there's a lot of bands, without referencing anyone in particular, where you can hear they're playing to a set of expectations, but they're not doing something that they're truly inspired to do. And then sometimes they do something that they're inspired to do, and that's hot garbage. But what you guys are doing is it's immolation, but it's just it every single time it feels to me like you guys just find a way to find that extra gear creatively and in terms of your performances.
Well, it's happy to hear. I mean, I'm glad to hear that, and that means a lot. And I think that it's true. I mean, we love what we do, and like I might have said earlier, we're just very passionate about it. So when writing, it's just like, I don't want to put anything together. I've had parts, say like on the last record, there's a few parts I've never saved parts, because that's just the way it is. I kind of get stuff done and it's done. But on the last record, I did have, being that, writing during the pandemic and everything, I had parts from me. I had a few parts from Alex that he had. And I think there's still a couple of those from back then that I still didn't use on this record. But there was stuff that I didn't use on the last record that I knew had so much potential, but I'm like, it's just not clicking here. So I don't want to use it until I know how to use it properly. I know it's got potential, and I don't want to waste that potential just to say, okay, here's another part. Let's, So this record, I happened to revisit a couple of those parts, and man, they worked out really, really well. And it's cool because a lot of those parts will trigger me to come up with something new, and then I'll work that around it. So, but the point is that we don't settle for anything. Like, I don't care how much time, if I got a week to write a song or a couple of days, I'm still going to make sure that's, if I'm pushed to the limit, I'm still going to make sure it's right. I'm not going to be like, all right, that's it, I'm done. It's like, I try to make it sound the way it needs to sound. And that goes for all of us, we don't want to just settle for something. So that's a big part of it too. I'm not just going to say, okay, that's cool. I want to be like, wow, okay, this is where it needs to be, and that's how I've always looked at it. And like, I won't even present a song to even just Ross until I feel like, yeah, all right, now I think it's ready. And then obviously I'll send him riffs and stuff when I think or a part that's cool, but I just like to try and really get things to where I feel where they need to be before I even present it to him alone. And then once he's like, all right, yeah, no, that's good. And then I'll send it out to the guys, and then we'll start working on it, but yeah, so there is, there's a passion and there's a concern for it being as best as you're never going to please everybody. I mean, I can tell you that right now. It's no matter what you do, you're not going to please everybody. So we don't try to, it's like, we just do what we do. Either people are going to like it or they're not. You can't, force someone to like your stuff. It's like, you just do what you do. And then we feel if it's good for us, and we're very confident about it, we feel at least our fans are going to hopefully like it. And that's all we can do,
How big of a critic, or how tough of an audience is Ross? I say audience, but you know what I mean. Like how challenging is it to present a new track to him or a new idea?
It's not that challenging. I mean, sometimes it's not so much like, ooh, of course I hope he likes it. I hope the guys like it. That's always the way it is. But there'll be something I'll be like, yeah, well, here it is. I'm not so sure. Oh no, it's fucking great. It's great. It's like, it ain't that hard, but obviously if there's something fail, he'll let me know, or the guys will let me know, you know what I mean? So, because fail is something we don't want. So, so I'm always acceptive of any feedback that's super critical, or I think like, hey guys, we need to do something about this, and on occasion, yeah, it might be something I'm like, really, but I always like, yeah, you're right, and so yeah, but for the most part, we're kind of at a point now where it's like, I'll write something, I send it, it's like, all right, that's that one. Where's the next one? Okay, all right, that's that one. It's kind of how it is now. But there are parts here and there where we'll be like, yeah, maybe, don't do that over this, or yeah, maybe that could be a little longer or shorter or whatever, But that's about it. I mean, so it's not super hard, but it's definitely something I feel like, I got to get that kind of like, because we've been a team since the beginning. So it's like my first, the first hurdle is to say, hey, Ross, here it is. What do you think? And as long as I know he's digging it or feels what I'm doing is correct, then I'm like, we'll sit on it for a couple of days, and I'll be like, all right, let me just see. And then we're like, all right, yeah, no, we're good. I'll send it out to Alex and Steve now, and that's kind of how it works. But
well, you guys are, one of the great teams in death metal, and you've stuck around. I mean, we are now coming up rapidly to 40 years where you've been together. What was it like? Tell me about first meeting him. Like, where did you guys meet? How did the friendship, because I would assume it got started with a friendship. How did that get struck up?
Well, I was playing in the one from New York, Rigor Mortis, the one from New York. Obviously, we did a couple of demos, and it was me, Andrew, and Dave playing drums. And Andrew was the one that kind of like had the band. I met those guys in high school, and he's like, hey, he knew I played guitar. I guess it came up in conversation. I mean, you see someone wearing whatever, a heavy metal Ronnie James Dio shirt or whatever, Metallica, whatever it is at the time, you strike up a conversation, and then eventually we started rehearsing together, and he said, he was writing his own stuff. So, it was just a fun thing to do, when I was in high school, So we would go to a rehearsal place in New Rochelle, and I'm pretty sure we'd go there. They'd come by there sometimes too, like friends, mutual friends, but we'd either go hang out, because Andrew knew the guys from say Ross's crew, like different parts of Yonkers. Yonkers, where we lived, was a very big city. So there's kind of patches and areas where people hang out. So I knew from my area, Andrew and Dave and his brother Tom, obviously. And then Andrew knew guys from over on Central Avenue, which is not too far, but, you know, it's an area over there where other people hang out. And so he'd be like, hey, you know, they're having a keg party in the woods, you know, like the woods behind the mall, you're hanging out, gonna listen to music and drink some beers. Okay, cool. So we'd go there and hang out. So that's kind of where it started, where I first met those guys. And Ross was part of that crew, as well as, you know, Will from Mortician. And so that's when we first met. And Andrew played, you know, the first song we had for the demo tape to those guys, and they were like, what the hell is this? And he's like, oh, this is my band. And I'm like, holy shit, you know. So that started up, you know, kind of like the conversation and getting to know those guys. And then Ross and a few other friends, when we would rehearse in Rochelle, they'd come by, and it would be like a Friday night or a Saturday night thing. They'd come by, they'd bring beers, we'd have like 10 people hanging out in the, you know, rehearsal room while we jammed. We'd do covers, we'd play different stuff, and it was just like a thing to do, you know. And then eventually, rigor mortis, Andrew decided he didn't want to do it anymore. So Tom, the other guitarist, and I wanted to keep going with Dave playing drums. And eventually, Dave didn't want to do it. So we got my friend Neil, who, you know, lived on my block. He was going to play drums, and then we needed a bass player. So Ross was already playing bass on his own with a friend, and then he had just joined like a thrash band, just to join a band because he just wanted to try and do something. But he was more into the heavier stuff like we were, of course. And then we said, hey, Andrew's not doing it. Do you want to play bass? He's like, fuck yeah. So that was it, you know. So, you know, it was me, Ross, Neil, and Tom. And then just a few weeks before our first show, we had a show set up with, pretty sure it was Ripping Corpse, and I think Revenant was on our first show. And that was coming up in a couple of weeks. And Tom he was going to sing, but then he was just like, you know what? I want to concentrate on my guitar, so I think you're going to have to sing. So Ross was like, all right. So then he became the singer, and that was the end of that. And that's how it started that. So yeah, that's kind of the beginnings. And then obviously we really were, you know, good friends for a long time. And over the years, both our families are tight. I'm very tight with his family. He's tight with my family. You know, we just became like brothers over the years, you know, and the same thing with Steve and Alex now too, you know. So yeah, that's kind of where it started. But we're just very, very close, and we know what works, you know, musically and what we do. I mean, we hang out all the time because me and him are obviously we live closer together, so we always go to shows together, do stuff together. And then, you know, when it comes to the music, obviously, you know, we've been doing this since the beginning with this band, so we know where we want to take it. And the guys obviously know too. I mean, and they've all been in the band for, you know, years and years and known us for years. So we're all on the same page. So, but that's, as far as Ross and I, that's where that started. And it's just been an ongoing thing where we, you know, in working together all these years, it's just gotten better and better. Like, we know what works and doesn't work. I know vocally, like when I'm, you know, we both work on lyrics. So when I'm writing lyric parts, I'll know, like, yeah, this is too much here. Like, I already know ahead of time. Whereas in the past, you'd be like, yeah, this is too much. We have to kind of like work. Now I already know because I know his style. I know how he is, you know. So, and we just know musically, like Ross, when he hears what I'm doing, he'll be like, oh, that's great. Or that part, I don't know, that sounds too happy. Or maybe that sounds like something else, you know. And we'll be like, yeah, okay, so we'll get rid of, you know. So I rely on his ear with the music and stuff. So, yeah, it's just that's just what we've developed over the years. So we're confident with each other, working with each other. And now we're confident with Steve. We're confident with Alex, you know what I mean? So it's great. I mean, I couldn't ask for better. You know, it's like, I think we're all super happy with the team we have. And we've been through some lineup changes over the years, but it's been, you know, little by little, a little at a time, you know. And now I think this has been together since, you know, I mean, Bill was in the band, our old guitarist. Bill was only left because he just didn't want to do it anymore. You know, he just had it, you know, he was tired of doing it. So that was cool. So we're on good terms with him. I mean, you know, he still comes out to shows. We'll stay at his place sometimes in Florida. We'll hang out together, go out to dinner. So, you know, it's all good. But Alex, we've known for years, and he's been in the band for over 10 years now. So, I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a good team, you know, and I think that's what keeps us going and everything's so strong, you know, it keeps things strong.
I was going to ask, well, you know, what the secret is to your and Ross staying so tight, but you've kind of answered that. One thing that blows my mind about him again is just how he continues to evolve and improve as a vocalist. He sounds exceptionally unique, but what what he has started to not started, but what he has refined over the years has been, you mentioned before, the enunciation. It's been the timing and the rhythm in his voice. I was talking to him when I had him on the podcast about one of my favorite moments on any Immolation record, and that is the last track on Kingdom of Conspiracy, All That Awaits Us. And he actually explained to me how this came to be, because he just wasn't nailing the part properly. But the is it truly darkest before the light, or is darkness all that awaits us? And I said, I fucking love that. Like, to me, I get goosebumps thinking about it, because like that is such a high point on the record to me. And it was so hysterical, him telling me the story about, it's just because I couldn't land the timing properly. And so that's how it ended up being.
I was, we were in the studio with Paul at the time, and me and Paul were rolling. Every time he'd be like, all right, I got it. Because he kind of understood what I was trying to tell him. Like this, he's like, oh, okay, all right, I got it. Because he had obviously been rehearsing it and thinking of it in a different way. And when I presented to him the other way, he's like, okay, yeah, that sounds cool. So he liked the way it sounded, but he just couldn't nail it. And oh my God, but the way he did it was so close. And even though it was completely off time, as I'm sure he told you, we just slid it into where it needed to be, and it worked out fine. And obviously he could do it no problem now. But when your brain's telling you one thing and you're trying to get it the other way, it's just, But yeah, I mean, his enunciation, I think, is his strongest point. And I think that it's the delivery and the fact that you can understand every word he's saying. And then rhythmically, it's like when I'm writing the music, a lot of times I already have certain ideas of how things can go and flow, so I have a lot of ideas that I present to him. Some he likes, some he doesn't, but whatever. I mean, we go over that together, but it's both of us, I think, looking at that and saying like, this part I already have, try it like this, or try it like, we're doing it together. Sometimes we'll be in the studio and he's recording like, all right, go ahead. How does this go again? And I'm like, boom. He's like, okay, boom. Kind of like with Paul, but I think he understands like what we're going with now. So it's just these certain parts are easier, but yeah, I mean, it's just the collaboration, working together with that, I think goes a long way too. But it's his, to me, the strongest is like the enunciation and his delivery, which makes it unique and cool. It doesn't sound like anybody else. And,
no.
And again, we try to tailor the vocals, because again, being very cognizant of how the vocals relate to the music or the part. If there's a climactic part like you're talking about in that song, not only do you want the flow of the vocals to be at their strongest, but you want the words and the meaning to be at their strongest. So there'll be parts in the song where I'm like, all right, that's the part. This is the climax of the song. And we'll have some lyrics and be like, cool, but these lyrics got to be like really fucking strong. Like they got to like make up, they got to kind of put the point on the song. They have to be the check mark of this song. And those lyrics have to kind of like encompass the whole song and be the most epic, just like that part sounds epic. And that to me is what makes the vocals and everything have that delivery, is that what they're saying, how they're being said, and they go with the music and the feel of it. So all of that combined, I think, is what makes it, that good. You know what I mean? So again, we're looking at everything. We don't really take anything. We take everything into account. And if there's a climactic part, you want the vocals and the lyrics to be just as climactic, as the music is.
What are some other happy accidents that have come out just from, things that happen in the recording studio, or, mistiming, miscommunication that just, in hindsight, just turned out perfectly?
It's probably a lot, but I can't. One funny one, which comes from the one that comes to my mind, is Challenge the Storm, that song from, I believe, Partisan Ruin. And we had the song done, it was all done, and then as usual we were working on lyrics. Like the 2 weeks we're in the studios when we're working on all the lyrics for the whole record, so the part comes up in the beginning and the vocals are supposed to be what I thought on a certain part, and then Ross was like, I really want to sing on this part, it's stronger if I sing on this part. I'm like, okay, but the song's kind of designed for the vocals to be on this part. And we already recorded it, But luckily, this was the time where Paul Orfino had already learned from us in the past and already changed the studio to be into the digital age, because he worked analog on the first record or two, and then he started using digital, I think, on Close to War Below. So by the time we had, Harnessing Ruin working on this song, so we're in digital mode now. So he was able to we're like, here's the situation, he wants to sing on this part, so we have to cut this other part down because it doesn't make sense if that part's going this long and now we're doing vocals here. So we literally had to sit there and cut and paste the part together so it worked, where Ross and I felt, yeah, that's the way it needs to be. If he's going to sing with this part, I knew that the music had to be like this. It couldn't be the way we left it. And that was pretty cool because it worked out phenomenal and it came out great. But it was like, that happened in the studio after Steve even recorded his part. So when Steve heard the song, he's like, what? He's like, what? What the hell did you do? I didn't play it that way, And it worked out really good. So, I mean, that was one of the things that comes to mind where, even at the last minute in the studio, you can make those adjustments and it works out for the better.
It's funny you bring up that album because one of the songs I thought about immediately as soon as I did my first listen through of the new record was Our Savior Sleeps off Harnessing Ruin. Not because musically, of course, there's a connection. It's Immolation, but in terms of the lyrics on Descent, there feels to me to be a quite direct thread to Our Savior Sleeps, just in terms of it's sort of taking this observant stance of the world as it is unfolding right now, and it's going, if there were anything that could intervene here, why is it not doing that?
Sure. And I think that's what we've always talked about, that in most of our stuff. It's like we're kind of a reflection of what we see around us, so it's like when it comes to religion in general, we're more of an observance in the misuse of it more than anything else. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what you believe, as long as you don't push it on me, you know what I mean? It's like, being an atheist is just like, I don't walk up to people and be like, oh, you're going to church? Why are you going to church? There is no God. Blah, blah, blah. I don't get in there. I don't try and present that to them. You believe what you want, but it's when that is used, when religion is used as a tool for extremism or to twist people into thinking certain things. And I don't know, it's obviously used to do a lot of bad as probably as much as good, so that's the stuff we look at. We look at the abuse within things that have happened in the church, which have happened, and we're just kind of reflecting that, whether it's stuff we've seen in the news or whatever. I mean, it's not like we're talking about stuff that doesn't exist, like that didn't happen. And just our criticism of certain things, both religious, we cover both political, both just in general, but we do it in such a way under this kind of aesthetic, you know what I mean? And that's just that's the kind of music. It's dark. And so we talk about dark subjects, but there's usually a lot of double meaning in what we're talking about. So if you could, on the surface, it might be about, you're looking at this and be like, oh, this is just about that. But if you really look at it, it could relate to a couple of other different things, and some of the way we talk about modern stuff, we might take a biblical shot at it and use those types of terms or whatever, use that kind of imagery or, imagery within the words, you know what I mean, what we're creating through the words to relay that. But we are talking about things that are happening today, and a lot of people pick up on that and some people don't, and it doesn't matter. It's like, to me, especially with the lyrics, it's like when you're reading along with this, it might mean something to you, just like when I listen to any kind of band or music, things I listen, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what that's about, but to me it's about this. Makes sense what it's about to you, what you get out of it. So we try not to talk about lyrics too detailed because yes, every song has a purpose and every song is about something in particular, but it might mean something to somebody else because we do try to do it more ambiguous and widespread, so it can have that opportunity to mean something and take on different meanings. So so that's where it's its strongest. But yeah, overall we talk about the world and obviously the direction we're going. I mean, Descent, the song alone, just what's happening at this moment, that's where we are right now. Where the hell are we going? You know what I'm saying? It's like things over the past just few years have gotten declined so much. It's like mankind just seems to be on this descent. You know what I mean? Like we're kind of covering a lot of grounds that, maybe we have had a lot of stuff in history happen, but we're repeating history that we shouldn't be. And I think sometimes it feels like we're kind of stepping off the stuff that we haven't quite been at yet. So and that's just how we're looking at things. Of course, yes, we all have hope. We're very optimistic people overall, but when it comes to writing for Immolation, we're also looking at reality and we're kind of like showing you what we see, you know what I mean? And it's I think the whole world is on a very in a very strange place right now, and I think lyrically, yeah, that shows up on this record a whole lot.
Well, I mean, the world, in my view, is on a trajectory right now that's unsustainable, and that has in turn led to I mean, there's kind of a couple of dominant forces wresting for control, but unfortunately, the dominant forces sit on the fringes and sit on the extreme, and that in itself creates friction. Equally, it means that there is going to be one part of society that is going to feel aggrieved if the other side is elevated, and one part of society that feels that feels elated because their side has won. It's this weird regression into tribalism that just takes away any objectivity, forces people into binary thinking, and what they can't seem to figure out is that the end result of that is catastrophic.
Yeah, and I think people have to look at the other side a little bit more. Like, you have to look at everything. I try to look at many different angles. I don't take every single thing that whatever side I'm not in full agreement with. I don't take everything and be like, everything they're doing is completely fail. Maybe to me most of it is, but I know there's other things that are not. But at the same time, yeah, you have to look at everything. It's like you have to look at a broader. You can't just constantly just always be on one side, and like, yeah, now everything's just like this. It's like, it's just ridiculous. It's gotten so bad, and I'm hoping that people are starting to realize that. It seems like some people are, and I think we can only hope, but we have to change the way our mindset is, because people instantly, things set them off so quickly now, and it's it shouldn't be that way. There's no conversation anymore. It's just this, you know what I mean? And that's something we really have to kind of take control of, because it always leads to bad places when all you have is that.
Well, it's also because the incentive structure is there for it to be that way, right? So no one is gonna, if you and I were friends on Facebook, and if we still had the old Facebook wall, and I posted on your wall, hey Bob, great riff on song X, you're not going to have like thousands of likes or thousands of eyeballs on it. But if I wrote some incendiary bullshit in there, like I saw you on stage here and you did this and this and this, and you're a fucking asshole, this, that, and the other, you'll have tons of attention there. And unfortunately, we're in this crazy like attention-based economy where people will do increasingly outlandish, provocative, confrontational, and outrageous things because they are given attention, and with the attention they get the dopamine hit that they're after. But it doesn't, it's almost irrelevant as to whether or not any of that is helpful or constructive. And that to me is again, that it's not just social media. It's like that, across a broad spectrum of things. But
I mean, you just have to, like there's a lot of people I know, like, Facebook, did you see what this, whatever, Facebook and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why even, so just don't look at it, who cares? It's like, it's like they get so sucked in, and it's like I'm not really on social media other than the band stuff, because it's just whatever. It's like, it's hard enough to keep up with that, to be honest. So I my personal stuff, I don't need to like put that out there too. It's like, to me, the tools of social media for me are like, band related. And that's, to me, they're a beautiful tool for that. When you get into the very personal stuff with the Facebook, and then people like, because look, everybody's going to have a different thing. And if someone, whether a family member or something, posts something from someone you're not really happy about, even if they're not posting anything like saying bad about something, but just posting something that they feel is a good thing or whatever, you don't have to comment on it and be like, well, blah, blah, blah. It's like, there's no need for it. Why bother? You know what I'm saying? It's like, sometimes you got to realize maybe these people, they think a certain way, and you're not going to change that. I have people in my family that think one way, I think another. I respect that. We agree to disagree, and that's it. I don't need to have a battle about it. What's the point? Because those things that maybe you don't disagree with, are you going to cause that thing to now create a problem between someone you love, because that thing bothers you and they like that? I mean, it's just, I don't know. I guess there's different degrees of that, but I try to just not even worry about it. It's not something I think is necessary to bring into my world in that sense. You know what I mean? So,
well, it relates back to your lyrics as well, because lyrically, Immolation have always been, you guys are far less on the nose, obviously, than a band like Deicide. And I was always wondering, although I will say this, I do, and I've said this before on the podcast, I do think Glenn doesn't necessarily get the credit that he deserves for the early Deicide records. Like the lyrics for Repent to Die, it's not just like Satan is Lord kind of shit. You know, there's more intelligence to it than that. But when it comes to you guys, you know, your lyrics have always been very intelligent, and increasingly so. I think there's like a level of introspection and depth to it that very often is missing from a lot of other bands. But was that decision to be, you know, more, I guess, considered and less, you know, provocative? Was that intentional?
I mean, that's what we did. So I guess it was intentional, not intentional. It was just natural, I guess. I mean, because we never, you know, I guess when we first came out, people might look at the cover or any covers that were, oh, they're a satanic band or whatever. It's just like, you know, no, we like using the references of, you know, the good and evil, you know, Satan and God or whatever. It's like, it's kind of like that personification of good and evil. And that's what everybody knows, you know what I mean? It's obvious. So we like using that as a tool, and it's just like a cool way to kind of like write, you know what I mean? And write about that kind of imagery. It's just, like I said, it's like visually, even words sometimes create a visual, you know, there's a certain way of writing where you can create a scene, you know, as opposed to just saying something. You could have certain words that say something, and then when you say something else, you create a visual scene with those words, you know, and that's all cool and everything. But it's like, yeah, we were never on the, it was always like more of like a you know, looking at stuff, you know, and addressing it and kind of just talking about it as an outsider, say, as opposed to just, you know,
pointing the finger. Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
It's just basically we're just going over, especially as things, you know, progressed over a career, we got better at that, I think. And it's really just like you said, it's more introspective. It's more just looking at what's happening around us and talking about it. You know what I mean? And that's always what we've done. We've never been, you know, I believe in Satan as much as I believe in God. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all whatever, you know, it's like, that's all man-made stuff. It's just, but, you know, when you see certain things, I mean, you know, when you see cool imagery or cool artwork and stuff of that kind of imagery, it's cool. I mean, you know, we all like it. It's just like, oh, that's sick. You know, it's like, this looks cool. Or dark. I see a lot of dark artwork on Instagram now, like really cool. Like, wow, that's sick. You know, it's like, but whatever. It's like, I'm not like, you know, I don't believe in all that stuff, but it's just a cool way. It's kind of like when you write stories or you write a book or whatever, you know, we're writing music that just, it creates a certain imagery. It has a certain aesthetic, but the meaning behind it is very real and talks about everything that's going on around us. So that's.
Have you got another interview about to start?
Coming in, so yeah.
All right, brother. I will let you go. Thank you very much for your time. Great talking
to you.
As always.
It was a pleasure, and you know, hopefully we'll see you at one of the shows. Definitely come up, say hi or whatever.
Hell yeah, yeah.
All right.
No, definitely.
Thank you.
Take care, brother. Bye. Taken from the forthcoming Immolation album Descent, due out for release on April the 10th on Nuclear Blast Records. That was Adversary. Absolutely killer track off an album that I think is going to blow your socks off if you're an Immolation fan. Massive thank you to Bob Vigna for his time. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Cut short at the end there. But in fairness to Bob, he did give me an hour, whereas everybody else only got a half an hour. So I am very grateful for that, and I certainly hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Bob has an open invite to come back to the show anytime he wants to be, and in the meantime, make sure that if you do buy yourself the new Immolation album, let them know what inspired you to do so. Right now, my friends, time for some Unsanctioned Filth. Before we go anywhere else, I featured this band, I think about 2 years ago. They are from Canada. They're called Beholder, and they've got a brand new album out called Prisoners de l'Abîme. That came out on December the 22nd of last year. I think it is fucking sensational. And so for your listening pleasure, you are going to hear a track called Corpse Sans Nom.
You Corpse Sans Nom by Beholder out of Canada, taken from their new album Prisonniers de l'Abîme. That album came out on the 22nd of December 2025, released independently for some inexplicable reason, but now joining for a second time the legends that sit in the Unsanctioned Filth alumni segment of this podcast. I will feature their Bandcamp link both on intothenecrosphere.com as well as in the description to the podcast. Make sure you show this band plenty of love. And if you're in a record label, sign these guys up already. Their previous album, Dualism, fucking brilliant. Their debut album was excellent as well. This new one, I think, tops them all. So great to see them going from strength to strength. A quick reminder, if you are in an unsigned band and you want me to check out your music, you can hit me up on intothenecrosphere@gmail.com or reach out via the website. If I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show. You should also be subscribed to my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Mondays, we've got Horrorwolf 666 with Brandon Legion. Wednesdays, we've got Everything Went Black with Mike Hill. Iblis Manifestations with Cheyenne. We have got Necromaniacs and Soul Knox on a Thursday. Necromaniacs, of course, one of my favorite podcasts of the week. That's hosted by Mike Hill and his co-conspirators, Mike Scandado and Jeff Kashid. And then the sinister minister, Carl Hikara, has got your back with Soul Knox on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, filling your week from Monday to Sunday with the very finest in podcast entertainment. Right now, my friends, if you know the name and plot details of more than one hentai movie, you're a sick freak and it's time for you to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
Okay, my friends, as always, we are diving headfirst into metalstorm.net, the finest metal news website in all the land. But before we do, I just want to say thank you very much to all of you who reached out to me over the weekend to wish me a happy birthday. Really warmed the cockles of my old and, I should say, increasingly aged heart. I had a great time on Friday. My wife took me to London for the weekend. We went for dinner at a restaurant called Hawksmoor, which it may surprise you to learn focuses on steak and meat. And straight after that, we went to the Comedy Store, one of my favorite places in London. And like I've mentioned previously on the podcast, if you are in London or from London or you coming to visit London, I defy you to find me a venue where you will have a better time for a modest amount of money. The drinks are cheap, the vibe in the place is always absolutely excellent, and the acts are world-class. You can even eat there if you want, but obviously we didn't do, but yeah, some of the comedians that we saw were fucking fantastic. I saw a guy named Tim Wrigglesworth, who was really, really good, and then the headliner, and I just need to remind myself what his name was, but honestly, I was in convulsions when he was doing his set. Just absolutely brilliant. Can't find his name now, but if I can dig it up later on, I will share it. But yeah, highly recommended if you've never been, or if you're coming to visit the UK at any point and you're wondering what to do with yourself. I strongly suggest you go to the Comedy Store. But yeah, spent the rest of the weekend just mooching around. Went to a couple of other spots to eat. We also went to watch a movie. Sadly, my wife didn't want to see They Will Kill You, or whatever it's called, and we ended up watching Project Hail Mary, which I thought was fucking atrocious. But that didn't put a damper on the weekend. You know, usually when I pass another year around the sun, I tend to take stock of where my life is at, where my life is going. I'll be very honest with you. I would much rather be turning 36 than 46. But when I think about every single thing that I've got going in my life, I have a fantastic wife. I have an amazing daughter. I've got fucking awesome friends. I have a roof over my head. I have food on my table. I have forged a career that has granted me a reasonable amount of luxury and some pretty incredible experiences. And on top of that, I got you guys. I've got this podcast. I've got an audience that is fucking absolutely kick-ass. And, you know, generally speaking, for some inexplicable reason, are interested in what I have to say week in and week out. And for that, I just want to say, with a very humble heart that I really am appreciative and really grateful to everyone who took time out of their day to send me a message. That really meant a lot to me. Now, let's move all that soppy shit aside and get into some music. Doedsvangr are putting out their brand new album on the, when is it? The 10th of April, I believe. Yeah, the 10th of April through Soul Cellar Records. They've now put out a new single called Black Sun Dissolution. It is taken from the album entitled Within the Flesh. Let's hear what it sounds like. When your band boasts the pedigree that Doedsvangr enjoys, it really would have been. I think the truly surprising thing about this would have been if it sucked. Now, obviously, we have been fans of Doedsvangr on this podcast for a very long time. I absolutely loved both previous albums, Satan of Suns, that came out in 2017, and particularly Serpents of Old, which came out in 2021. I can't quite remember where that stacked up on my best of list for that year, but I can tell you what, this is going to be a contender for the best of 2026. It is fucking brilliant. Nasty riffing, really aggressive vocals, really interesting use of melody. There is a Norwegian hint to it. There's a bit of Finland in there as well, and a bit of France, representative of the band members themselves. I mean, just in case you don't know who's in the band, so you've got Doets Admiral, also of Nordjevil and Notfat on vocals. You've got Shutrog from Graven Sin, Horner, and Sargeist playing the old guitar. And you now have, as of this new record, Sunrob, bassist of Gehenna. And then, of course, you've got Anti-Christian on drums. You've got BST on second guitar. You know, both those dudes have been with a ton of great bands as well. So, I mean, you've got the fucking elite of the elite of proper UG black metal playing in this band. And shock horror, it is brilliant. Beyond top notch. And back to the point about 2026, man. What a year this is turning out to be. I've taken a different tack this year, and I can't remember whether I've mentioned this yet on the podcast or not, but instead of doing my best of list at the end of the year and then kind of having it ready to present to all of you, I'm going to be doing constant calibration and listening throughout the year. So I've got my list going, and I'm just adding to that list as I go on and moving bands around and, you know, deciding where what band is going to land. So there's going to be even more thought and more polish gone into the list is what I'm saying. But as things stand right now, I've got 14 of a possible 30 spots already and, you know, already occupied, with bands that in any other year, or releases that in any other year, I should say, would have a pretty strong shot of making the list. So, yeah, 2026 is turning out to be just a fucking astonishing year for really good music. I didn't even realize that Doedsvangr are putting out a new record, and they've come and surprised us all. But I am very happy that they've done so. Brilliant track, great band, and very deserving of a beyond top notch to kick off the news rant for this week. Moving on to our next track, Passeism, a black metal band out of Russia, are streaming a new track entitled Lingering Chant of Mistrust. It's going to be part of their next EP, Hieratic Disarray. The latter apparently was mixed and mastered by the great Arkady Navajo. I'm going to pause there. There's a couple of things about this that is just not working for me. Number one, the riffing and the guitars aren't nearly as in your face or aggressive as they need to be to keep pace with the vocalist. His name, by the way, Konstantin Korolev, and he's in a bunch of other bands, including Paroxysm Unit, and another band called Womb Ripper. A lot of the guys in the band seem to be from Womb Ripper, who I am not familiar with, but he's got pretty decent vocals, sounds super aggressive, and then you've got this riffing that sounds like, I think the best way to describe it is it's like somebody took the medieval era score off of an early Civilization game, and then they put it through an electric guitar and some distortion. It just has this quite I don't know the word for it. It's just tepid. It's just weak, and it doesn't work with those vocals at all. I mean, even when the blast starts, that doesn't help it at all. The blast just sounds out of place as well. So, in as much as Doedsvangr sounded like a band, and the song in particular that we were listening to, it's a song written by men who truly feel the darkness. I don't hear any darkness here. I just hear something that I find fucking boring, to be quite honest with you. So that's going to get a thumbs down, I'm afraid. They can play their instruments, no question about that, but it's not good enough in 2026. I mean, it hasn't been good enough for a fair old while. We're going to get to that new Dimmu Borgir single in just a second, but I had a couple of questions come in over the weekend, so let's dive into one of those. The first one came from Furbert74. You can choose only 5 songs from the entire discography of Akrakoka, Antichrist Imperium, and Voices. And then he's added a sunglasses emoji as if to suggest that he knows how difficult that'll be for me. But I've put some thought into it. And if I had to pick only 5 tracks from those otherwise masterful discographies, I would pick the following. In no particular order, except for the first one. The first one, I'll explain why in a second, but Becoming the Adversary by Akrokaka, in my view, their greatest song. One of, if not my favorite song of all time. If I were Akrokaka's management or manager, I would mandate that they play that song every single night that they are on stage as their final track. It is their Seek and Destroy, their Angel of Death, their Holy War, their fucking Court Namash. I mean, that is their signature song. And it is the perfect signature song because it combines everything that is great about that band into one just delicious cacophony of musical Satan worship. I fucking love it. So that's my number one. That's my go-to out of those three bands, without a shadow of a doubt. And then in no particular order, Vicarious Lover by Voices. That's off the brilliant London album. Ceremonial Suicide Rites by Antichrist Imperium. That could, yeah. My favorite Antichrist Imperium album is definitely Volume 3, but Ceremonial Suicide Rites, oh, what a fucking song. Just, I mean, it's just Matt Wilcock and basically everybody else in the band just at the peak of their powers. Sinister sounding, thoroughly convincing, and just so creative, so unique. I fucking love it. Next, I would go with Horns of Baphomet by Akrokaka. I know potentially in the grand scheme of things, a trite selection, but I do fucking love the song. And when they play it live, good God, what a track. And then for my number 5, Exorcist Evisceration by Antichrist Imperium. And that's off the new record. Brilliant, probably one of the best vocal performances by Sam Loynes across both the Voices and the Antichrist Imperium discographies. So there you go. If I had to choose only five songs by those bands, that is what I would choose. Let's grab another one before we get into that Dimmu Borgir track. Kurt Ainsalu has asked me a quick one. Manosphere, is this the fall of man? So I read something the other day where somebody said that alcoholism isn't the problem. It's everything that leads to it that is. And I think the existence of a so-called manosphere, in the same way as OnlyFans, thought culture, political extremist groups, all of these things are downstream consequences of societal decay and the worst of Western excesses that seem to compound and get worse with every passing year. Because all of these things that I just mentioned, including the manosphere, they all clearly started off as a Western phenomenon. I know the virus has now mutated and spread into the rest of the world, but, they all started off, in my view, because we've had it too easy in the West. In countries where people suffer, where people are concerned about having their basic needs catered to, they don't waste their time with this fucking bullshit. And then, as for the manosphere in particular, I think one of the biggest problems in society today is that teenagers, or teenage boys, I should say, no longer have the role models that you and I used to. Like when I was young, my heroes were Bruce Lee, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Dorian Yates. And then later on, Ric Flair, and then later on, for a big chunk of my adolescent years, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, these are the dudes I looked up to, the guys I wanted to emulate and be like. And, you're never going to be 100% like Stone Cold Steve Austin, but, it made me pick up some weights, maybe go to the gym. It made me get interested in martial arts, and all of those things were all positive. They were masculine role models that I think it was healthy for me, and I see that manifest in most of my generation. Nowadays, boys have basically nothing. I mean, I can't see anything in the new generation that, unless you're talking rugby players in the new generation, I can't see anything at a global level, any guys at a global level that are worth looking up to. You have a bunch of boys whose fathers are fucking useless. They live in a society that denigrates, belittles, and villainizes masculinity at every turn. So they're walking around in a perpetual state of confusion. They're dissatisfied with their life. They're desperate to find something that brings order to the chaos of their lives. And that's fertile soil for a host of absolutely terrible ideas. I mean, guys like Sneeko and, Myron Gaines and all of these other fucking absolute nerds I can't stand the sight of, but I understand why people get interested in and follow their content and buy into what they say, and it's for the reasons that I just outlined now. So no, I don't think it's necessarily the only sign of the fall of man, to answer the original question, but it's certainly a symptom of a society in trouble. That's my take anyway. All right, on to some more music, and we've got a brand new full-length offering finally coming out by Dimmu Borgir. It says, 8 years after the release of their last full-length effort, Aeonian, Norwegian symphonic black metal formation Dimmu Borgir is now ready to release the follow-up entitled Grand Serpent Rising. It'll be set free on May the 22nd, 2026 via Nuclear Blast Records, recorded in Gothenburg, Sweden, with producer Fredrik Nordstrom, to taste a first piece of the new music. Check out Ulgewelt and Blodsodel, the new single and video. Let's hear what it sounds like, my friends. Let's check out the band comments first, and then I'll give you my thoughts. So Shagrath has commented, I truly feel we've outdone ourselves musically on this album. It's been a long and demanding process, but seeing how it all came together makes it incredibly rewarding. Grand Serpent Rising reflects every era of Dimmu Borgir. This album carries echoes of every chapter of Dimmu Borgir's legacy. I believe our fans will recognize that and find something within it that truly resonates. Silenor says, it fits perfectly. Dimmu Borgir is a leviathan of a band on a grand scale, and we are rising once again. While the serpent represents evil to some, for us it symbolizes something else: renewal, growth, knowledge, and liberation. Shedding our skin, so to speak. And let's not forget that February 2026 marks the end of the Year of the Snake, roughly the same moment this album was completed. there is absolutely no question this is on a grand scale. I have to give them kudos for at least attempting to do something different to what they did on Eonian. Is it something that I am blown away by? No. I would be lying if I said that I was. I absolutely respect the grandiosity and the scale at which this band operates. But when it comes to Dimmu Borgir, Stormblast that's my favorite Dimmu Borgir album. And as much as I would love to believe that there are going to be songs on this album that have hints of Stormblast on them, I don't necessarily. I'm not holding my breath. So I'm not going to give this a thumbs down. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think if you've been a fan of later career Dimmu Borgir, I think you're probably going to quite like this. I'm still going to hold full judgment until I hear the whole thing, because I think potentially it could be one of those songs that in the flow of the record, might make sense. But for right now, it's not dark enough, and it's probably a little too polished for my tastes. I think that's where I'll leave it. Okay, Frozen Soul, they've dropped a new track and official music video. Now, I've thought for quite some time that Frozen Soul, the hype around them seems to be unfounded to me. Unsurprisingly, there's been quite a lot of hate directed at this track. I've not heard it yet, but we're going to listen to it right now. Death metal crew Frozen Soul has released a music video for Invoke War, featuring a guest appearance by Machine Head's Rob Flynn. The track appears on the band's next studio album, No Place of Warmth, due out on May the 8th, 2026. If ever there was going to be a song that wasn't going to change my mind on a band, it's the song that we just heard. Interestingly, in terms of the running order of this new Frozen Soul record, this is track number 2. And it feels to me like something that I could maybe see it make sense if it was the intro to a record. I mean, if it was the intro, I would say it's pretty boring. It's a pretty pointless intro. But, I mean, it is even more pointless as a single. The vocals sound to me basically just like the vocalist is yelling war, invoke war all the time, and it's like, what the fuck is interesting or different or new about this? This sounds like something that Jungle Rot would have fucked around with in the jam room and then forgot about. That's like charitably the best thing I could say about this. It sounds like something that the Jungle Rot guys would have jammed on and then gone, yeah, no, that's not really for the album. That's just to fuck around with in the rehearsal space. Brown Down, that fucking absolutely sucks. And like I said, I mean, that's just not a band I've ever been particularly excited about, and I certainly am not going to be more excited about them now. Okay. Let's move on to something else. Winterfilleth present the Unyielding Season. Now, actually, that probably is as good a place as any to talk about my favorite albums or the albums I'm listening to right now. Now, there were a couple of absolutely kick-ass releases coming out over the weekend. Winterfilleth, not least of all, within that group. The Unyielding Season, in my opinion, easily the best thing that Winterfilleth have done. I like the previous things that they've released. I thought the Briar record, the Imperious Horizon, I thought that was excellent. But what I think has taken the Unyielding Season above that record and everything else in their back catalog has been the fact that they have retained their atmosphere and their dynamics and their melody, but they've just added a bit of an edge to it. Like, all of the songs feel a lot spicier. They feel a lot more aggressive. And it feels like they've retained the best of the atmospherics and they've just added a fucking shitload of testosterone. And that is always going to land well with me. So in my view, if you haven't checked out the Unyielding Season yet, if you've never been a fan of Winterfilleth, I would strongly suggest that you give them another try, because I think you may find your head turned a little after you listen to the Unyielding Season. So that's one album I've really been digging on. I have given Tulis and their new album, Morbid Desires, a chance, despite the fact that I didn't really like the previous single that I heard. But a lot of you said, make sure you check out the band. Not bad. Need to probably spend a little bit more time with it to kind of really wrap my head around it. I've also listened to the new Hellripper, Coronac. Of course, that Hellripper episode last week was met with some critical acclaim by the Legion. A lot of you guys like that very much, and the album is absolutely fucking sensational. And then that new Cruel Force album, Haneda, much as we kind of expected from the singles that we listened to on the News Rant, that has turned out to be really fucking cool. So, I mean, another bumper crop this weekend. And we've got a whole bunch of fucking cool stuff coming out in April as well. If I check out the upcoming releases list, let's have a quick gander. Newcomb, The Grave Remains, that comes out on the 10th of April. Really looking forward to that. Immolation, Descent. I'm going to just say this once again. That album is... It's crazy to me this year how many bands are putting out music that either competes with or is on a par with the very best they've ever done, or is just the best they've ever released. 10-year bands that are like 6, 7, 8 albums deep. Now, whether Descent is the best thing that Immolation has released or not, it's a bit premature to say. But I have listened to the album back to back 4 or 5 times now, and I'll tell you this: it's fucking magnificent. If not their best, it's certainly in the conversation. And for a band to have been around, and I said this many times to Bob when we were talking, for a band to have been around for as long as they've been around and still be operating at that level, I mean, that takes some doing. Uada, that Interwoven album that they're putting out, really excited about that. You've got Doedsvangr, Within the Flesh. We already spoke about that album. Melakesh, Sentinels of Shamash. All of this, by the way, is just on April the 10th. So I don't know whether there's some sort of fucking satanic cosmological significance to April the 10th, but certainly going to be a hell of a lot of good music coming out on that particular Friday. On the 17th, we've got Reeking Aura with On the Promise of the Moon. Mike Hill had the Reeking Aura guys on his podcast last week. If you haven't checked that episode out yet, really love Reeking Aura. Really looking forward to that record. We've got Knock und Tarsa, A Cry for the Slain. That's coming out on the 24th of April. What else have we got here? Oh, fucking hell. At the Gates, The Ghost of a Future Dead. That is something I'm really looking forward to. Pure Wrath, Bleak Days Ahead. Atmospheric black metal, courtesy of the gang over at Deborah Morty. Definitely want to check that out. Terror, Still Suffer. Prime hardcore, the way hardcore should sound. We have also got, I know for an absolute fact it's on the list for this month, although it doesn't look like it is listed on metalstorm.net, but I know Aversio Humanitatis comes out in April as well. So between all of that, there's like I said, plenty to be excited about. We're going to skip that Winterfilleth single. Safe to say, you definitely need to listen to it. And we are going to move on to the new Moonspell. Now, again, before I get into Moonspell, let's answer another question. I had one from, and this was another long-serving Legion member, Margarita Costa, posted a message on last week's episode. He said, if I'm correct, you are 45 at this stage of your life. Could you see yourself living alone with no wife, no daughter, only yourself to care about? What do you think of people who have money to have a family and decide to just be alone? Now, of course, I'm married and I have a daughter, so this is all hypothetical. And yes, in theory, I definitely could see myself living alone. But at the same time, there's a price to pay for every decision that you make. Like the great Thomas Sowell said, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. For starters, I feel like life in most Western countries is becoming really expensive. And, at least very few people, I think, in this world are now guaranteed a job for life. The previous generation, the boomers, they had a lucky, job for life at the fucking railway or at the telephone company or wherever it is that you were working. That was just almost accepted, and those days are no more. So there's definitely an economic trade-off to living alone. I mean, you may gain freedom, peace, and quiet, etc., by being by yourself, but there's absolutely no question that, without somebody else contributing to your household finances, things are going to be a little tougher. So that is definitely a practical consideration. I'm not saying you need to, marry your fucking roommate, but I think you understand what I mean. The other thing that I think is an important consideration, and as I'm getting older, I think this is landing with me a little bit harder. It might be fun and comfortable and great and brilliant to enjoy all the freedom of being 45 years old and living alone at home. But what about when you're 60 or 70? I feel like at the moment what I'm observing, and this is supported by quite a lot of data on the subject as well, a lot of articles I've read on the matter, there's a huge number of people in their late 30s or older who are living like they're 19 years old. And I fear that the future they're walking into is going to be not only very sad and very lonely, but really fucking difficult as well. I mean, imagine you're 68 years old, your looks are gone, you don't have a pot to piss in financially, and you don't have anyone at all who gives a shit about you. No kids, no significant other, no one to take care of you. For me personally, that is a very scary proposition, and I think, unfortunately, it's one that's going to be a reality for a lot of people. Now, for those people, how they get over that, it's anybody's guess. But that's not really a future I think I'd want to face into. I wouldn't want to, when I made the decision to be with my wife and to enter into that relationship, I've said this before, I feel like I made it from a place of having options. Like, I think the worst thing that a man can do is to fall into this trap of, you complete me, I can't live without you, all the fucking Hollywood romantic bullshit that I think is just over the generations, and particularly over my generation and beyond, not done us any fucking favors. But I added her to my life because I wanted her to be part of my life, and I felt like I could, be with a bunch of other women. I could, carry on being a bachelor. I could do whatever I want. But I felt like she added so much to my life that having her in my life was better than not having her in my life, if that makes sense. So that I think is the right thing to do. And I think in order to be able to get to that place, you should be comfortable with the idea of living alone when you're 45 or when you're 46. But in the long run, if I had to choose between living alone or not living alone, going into my old age, an old lonely single man, yeah, I know which road I would choose. So I know that answer is probably a little bit more convoluted than you were looking for, but hopefully it answered your question all the same. Margarita Costa, thank you very much for submitting it. So on to Moonspell. They've announced an album release with details enclosed. Portuguese metal institution Moonspell is excited to announce the release of their next studio album, Far From God, on July the 3rd, 2026, via Napalm Records. It was produced, mixed, and mastered by Jamie Gomez Arellano of Orgon Studios. They've got, the usual credit roll that Metal Storm includes on every one of these articles. It's crazy for me to see Moonspell referred to as a metal institution. I still remember when Under the Moonspell came out. And it's actually an EP I still go back to. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I also really like Wolfart. I like Irreligious. I mean, I was even on board with Sin, Pecado. So really, really good stuff. The main place where I fell off when it came to Moonspell was with 1755. I think Extinct was starting. Extinct is the record they put out in 2015. I think it was starting to push a little bit for me. But it was really with 1755. I just felt like nothing that they were doing was bad per se. I just felt like creatively they had run their course. But that being said, much like all the legacy bands that we've spoken about on this show, whether it be Samael, Megadeth, Metallica, all the bands I grew up with, there's always going to be a part of me that's rooting for them to succeed. So let's hear what this track sounds like. That is definitely the best thing I've heard from Moonspell for at least a decade. And, with this band, you can never proclaim that a record is going to sound a certain way. Like, you can never just take it as read that an album is going to go in a certain direction just because a single sounded a certain way. Because if you go back to some of the best stuff that they did, whether it's Night Eternal, Memorial, The Antidote, even the earlier stuff, less so obviously Under the Moonspell, but I mean, there's a lot of different layers to their sound. They'll have songs that are a bit more aggressive, have more screaming, shouting, etc. And then they'll have songs like this, and that's kind of always been the cool thing about Moonspell. Very rarely, and there have been albums that have been like that, but very rarely have they had an album that sort of just had one texture to it. So it could very well be that Far From God has, moments that are maybe or have a little bit more in common with 1755. But as it sounds to me, goth Moonspell is good Moonspell, especially at this stage of their career. It sounds like a rejuvenated band. That's going to get a thumbs up from me. I know it won't be to everybody's liking, but I fucking love it. I think it's really, really good. And given that they're on Napalm Records, I might actually have an opportunity to finally get Fernando Ribeiro on the podcast. So I'm going to see if I can make that happen. He's a guy that I've wanted on here for quite some time. So fingers crossed we could make that happen. All right, up next, we've got Resurrected, who have presented a brand new single entitled Perpetual. Brutal death metal machine Resurrected has revealed a visualizer video for Perpetual, the newest single and title track of their oncoming full-length effort. The latter drops on April the 10th on Testimony Records. I think the nicest thing I can say about Resurrected is that they're better than Frozen Soul. So, looking up more about the band on Metal Archives, because I'm not familiar with them, they had a debut record that came out in 1998, cunningly entitled Raping Whores. They put out Fairless to the Flesh, Butchered in Excrement, another very subtle title. Blood Spilled, Endless Sea of Loss, Fierce. Their self-titled album came out in 2017, and now we've got Perpetual in 2026. Again, yeah, way better than Frozen Soul. Nothing I haven't heard before done 1,000 times better. There's like hints of Pyrexia, a bit of Deicide thrown in here for good measure, but some of it feels suspiciously all show and no go, if you know what I mean. Like, it's got that heavy element to it, but it just doesn't feel like when I listen to Dying Fetus or when I listen to Werewolves, like I'm talking about modern death metal now, there's something genuinely convincing about the fucking, just fist that hits you in the face when you listen to either of those two bands. And I'm not getting that same feeling from Resurrected. I may be in the minority. Maybe some of you guys are listening to this thinking that is absolutely brilliant. But personally, it's a bit of a swing and a miss for me, this one. So not fully worthy of a brown down or even a thumbs down, but definitely not something that I'm going to go back to with any great degree of anticipation. Okay. Nargaroth have debuted a new single. This one I've been excited about. Black metal unit Nargaroth are premiering Requiem Germania, the first single of their next studio record, Apocalyptic Steel. The latter comes out on June the 26th, 2026, via Season of Mist. I think a couple of black metal bands this week have really drawn the short straw by putting out singles in the same week as that Doedsvangr single. I think most bands were gonna come up short when compared to the just brilliance of that track. But I would say maybe on this one, even judged by its own merits, it's pretty boring. I don't expect every black metal band to be about blasting fury from start to finish. As a matter of fact, that's not my preference at all when it comes to black metal. But this just seems a little plodding. It never quite gets gets to the point. The main riff, the main melody is not bad, but it's not something that is, it's not giving me goosebumps. It's not hitting me in the feels, as the young bloods would say. So I'm afraid that's going to be a pass. Not an entire thumbs down, but a pass for sure. Again, willing to be convinced otherwise if I, were to hear their the whole album and think that it is actually way better than I initially anticipated. But yeah, as it stands right now, not going to cut the mustard. Now, I wanted to check out one more song before we move on to the Swirly of the week, and trust me, this Swirly is one of my most merciless to date. Gothram have just put out a new single called Truth in My Own. It is taken from their new album Projections, which is going to be coming out on May the 29th. It says here, with their third album Projections set for release on May the 29th, UK doom metal juggernaut Gothram have completed their Visions trilogy, begun with 2020's Reflections debut LP and followed by 2023's acclaimed Distortions album. Now, I will say this, I much preferred Distortions to Reflections. Reflections I was really excited about, mostly by virtue of the caliber of people playing in the band, but I did feel that it was a little bit disappointing. Distortions, on the other hand, way better. As expected, they say, considering Gothram was formed and is helmed by UK doom metal veteran Hamish Glencross, formerly of My Dying Bride, Valenfire, and Solstice, and features doom metal drummer extraordinaire Sean Taylor, also of My Dying Bride and Anathema. Projections sees Gothram continue to develop and broaden their sound even further, and building upon the cornerstones of Distortions. Now with an expanded lineup, which includes keyboardist, co-vocalist Catherine Glencross, bassist Bob Croller, and new second guitarist Chris McLaughlin. Projections is Gothram's most layered, varied, and complex release yet, all while still upholding the colossal, emotionally charged, heavy doom backbone that has defined the core of the band's sound. Funnily enough, also features Aaron Stainthorpe on vocals on the fourth track on the record, Endure My Skin. The single they've put out is Truth in My Own. Let's give it a whirl. Right, I'm going to pause there. Here is what Gothram is lacking for me on this track. And again, like I said, when it comes to this band, I was not as impressed. I was a bit underwhelmed, as a matter of fact, by Reflections. I know a lot of people really enjoyed it, but it didn't quite do it for me. Distortions, their second record, I thought was a big step up, and I did really enjoy that album. What I am missing here is a hook. I feel like the foundation is laid for something bigger, and the track is over 6 minutes long, so it may very well be coming. But up to the point that we had listened so far, it just wasn't quite there. If you compare them to My Dying Bride, if you think about all of the best My Dying Bride tracks, they're all bookended or punctuated, or at some point in the song, there's that huge payoff. It'll build and build and build, and then all of a sudden you just hit by this crescendo of emotion, epic melodies, just something completely and utterly memorable. If you think about, let's take A Sea to Suffer In, off of The Angel on the Dark River. The part of that track where Erin is singing, "I'll suffer in your sea, your ocean bleeds into me, I'll fall through your endless sky, but never ever cry." I mean, that's just fucking, it's a gut punch, and it has been made as effective as it is because of how the song has been building up and building up. And yeah, I feel like the buildup is there, but the gut punch, at least to this point, is lacking. So once again, I mean, I could go back and listen to it and change my mind completely, but on first pass, for the first 2 minutes or so, actually we listened to the first 2 minutes and 19 seconds, I'm yet to be convinced. So again, I'll be fair and balanced. I'm not gonna completely write it off and call it garbage, but what I'm gonna say is I have yet to be convinced. Now, something that I most definitely am convinced of is that the next recipient of the Swirly of the Week is perhaps the most deserving. I'm looking for words. I've actually got a special word to describe him that's coming up during the Swirly segment. So you sit back while I hit the music.
No. Oh, you like?
Last week on the show, I featured a black metal band from Mexico called Of Darkness I Breed in the Unsanctioned Filth segment. And most of you guys probably know this already. Just like most bands I've showcased on there, Of Darkness I Breed's inclusion came off the back of a direct email from the band themselves. I checked out the music, I liked what I heard, and I figured the Hellripper episode, given the traction it was likely to get, would be a great opportunity to put them in front of a wider audience. And to be fair, that episode has performed pretty well. So by the end of this month, we should likely be sitting somewhere around 5,000 views and downloads across YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and everywhere else the show lives. Of course, Hellripper as a band, I think there's a growing interest in them. So what you tend to find with those types of episodes is a lot of people tend to go back to them retrospectively. And not only that, but I also included, as I do for all the bands on the Unsanctioned Filth segment, the Of Darkness I Breed Bandcamp on the website, intothenecrosphere.com, in case you missed it. Now, I'm fully aware that the numbers I've just quoted aren't exactly Joe Rogan numbers, but they are more than enough to ensure that a smaller band gets in front of a genuinely engaged audience who actually gives a shit about underground music and who might otherwise never have heard of them. And that is something that you can take to the bank, my friends. I've spoken to a lot of people from a lot of different record labels. Into the Necrosphere's audience has a reputation as an audience that goes out and buys music. Now, also, just to be crystal clear, as always, there was zero expectation from my side of anything in return. No quid pro quo, no obligation, not even a thank you, even though that's usually appreciated. To their credit, the band did share the episode on their socials. So you can imagine my surprise then when the very next day I see a comment under that post from one Alex Valadares, who, as it turns out, happens to be the guitarist in Of Darkness I Breed. And he is simply quoted as saying, "What an asshole!" ! Now, my first response was to think maybe this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe it's one aimed at somebody else. Maybe it's a joke that didn't quite translate. You know, after all, you have to be a fucking psychotic to lash out at somebody who is literally just shown you a kindness for absolutely no reason at all. So I responded with a Stone Cold Steve Austin gif, something light touch. You know, I didn't want to start a confrontation, just to see if I could draw out a little bit of context. Nothing. Instead, the comment gets deleted and no follow-up, no DM, no clarification, no, hey, bro, sorry that our wires got crossed, just total silence. Then later in the day, the band's own Facebook account replies to one of my posts in a way that actually seemed very appreciative. Again, gave them the benefit of the doubt, responded and said, you know, it's my pleasure to feature you guys on the show, but it seems like your guitarist was, I can't remember exactly what I said, but, you know, it's something to the effect of, you know, was aggrieved by something. I posted that basically asking for at least some sort of clarification, but again, nothing. Now, at this point, at the point that I'm recording this, we are nearly a week on, and let's be honest, you'd have to be pretty naive at this point to believe that this was anything other than intentional. They've had the time to come back and clear up any misunderstandings, and, you know, thus far, absolutely nothing has happened. When I mentioned this to you guys on Instagram, a few of you suggested that maybe it's a translation issue. You know, there are certain Spanish words apparently that don't always carry over cleanly into English. Fair enough. So let me offer some linguistic nuance of my own from Afrikaans, my second language. In Afrikaans, we have a word pronounced duis. Duis literally translates to box. In practice, it is also commonly used to call somebody a cunt. So, Alex, you've had 6 days to either apologize or explain. I've never said a bad word about your band. I never took a shot at you personally. The only thing that I did was give you a platform for the Legion to hear your music, and I asked for absolutely nothing in return. So based on your response or your lack of response, you are beyond a shadow of a doubt, a colossal duis. One who would benefit immensely, in my opinion, from a double Melvin followed by an extended head-first dunk into the toilet bowl of justice. And that, my friends, is the Swirly of the Week. On that note, we wrap up episode 311. A huge thank you to my guest, Robert Vigna from Immolation. Hope you guys check out that Immolation album when it gets released. Like I said earlier, it is absolutely sensational. If you have stuck around until the very end of the podcast, you have my thanks. I will be back next week. In the meantime, whatever it is that you are doing and wherever it is that you are, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.